And tell us how you got then connected with Formula One.
When stepping back into a racing environment, I saw that there was young talent that were in a similar situation to mine, couldn't really afford to race. And I started to help these kids out. First, just in an angel investor form, and then with a professional management company. And whilst doing that, I established connections to auto companies and joined forces. And Mercedes was one of them. And we had a Mercedes Junior program that was half financed by myself and half financed by Mercedes. And then one day, I find myself as a co-owner of a Mercedes racing team. And we grew that entity to solid mid-size company that was involved in making Formula 3 engines, touring cars, GT cars, limited road cars for AMG. And that was basically combining my love for cars, particularly racing cars, and investments.
You had to have been extremely thrilled to be coming full circle to some extent, in the sense that, if you go back more than a decade prior, this was where the passion was. This was what you really wanted to experience. And now you had the chance to make a mark in a different area. Of course, you weren't in the seat, but you were combining your business acumen and experience and translating that into the track to some extent.
Yes, and it was an interesting experience that I made that made me realize. Now, let me word it differently. I wasn't aware that it went all the way back to racing, and I invested in an auto company heavily involved in motor racing, and we IPO'd it. And as the business model was for venture capital firms, I exited the company in the IPO, and we sold a majority stake to a Middle Eastern investor. And I remained on the board as a non-executive and went to one of the races and realized I'd actually like to continue to own this company. And realized that my passion for investing and exiting, generating cash, actually changed to a desire for a more entrepreneurial role because I love the sport.
And by 2012, Mercedes-Benz needs a managing partner. It wants somebody with skin in the game. It wants to change the structure of its own Formula One team. And so here comes another opportunity. One that
there was a step in between. The step in between was that I bought a stake in Williams Formula One team. Williams is one of the most successful historic, racing teams, with Frank Williams at the helm of it, team principal in a wheelchair, highly inspiring person. And I bought a minority share in Williams, grew the stake, and in 2012 our chief executive officer resigned from one day to the other because of a non-alignment with the board. And Frank Williams approached me and said, "Do you want to run it with me together?" And here I find myself for the first time in an executive function running the team, and I loved it. That season we won the last Formula One race for Williams until today, and I enjoyed taking the team to the next level. And then the same year, Mercedes approached me and said, "How can it be that a private team like Williams is starting to beat Mercedes on track? Can you analyze?" And I tried as good as I could to understand. They allowed me access whilst keeping it confidential, and I came to the conclusion that their expectations were different to mine. We operated on the same budget, and when I asked them when I asked the directors of Mercedes what their objectives were, they said, well, winning the world championship. And I said, but then one of us is wrong, because I'm operating on the same budget, and my expectation is finishing in the top 5. Yours is to win. So you gotta set your targets more realistically. And this is when we started the conversation that eventually ended up in me buying 30% of the team and running it.
And for you, how pivotal was that moment in your career path? How much did that? Maybe how significant was it for you to make that kind of change?
It was very significant, because that is the moment I decided to switch from a purely investment-like philosophy, because you could see the transitional year with Williams I saw it as a transitional year that eventually I would come back into finance. But then I took an operational role, and I liked it. It was entrepreneurial because I co-owned the team. Daimler gave me a very long leash, so I could manage a team in a way that I thought was right, whilst providing me with the right support of this mighty brand Mercedes in the background. And pretty soon we started to become more successful. And since then, I enjoyed the ride.